This week on Wild Talk, I have Sean Tait from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, who takes us behind the badge and shows us what life is really like on the high seas as a fish cop. Then in Tools of the Trade, I have Todd Snader from the Pure Archery Group, who breaks down the precision gear that's pushing archery forward. Then in Outdoor Lens, Kyle Stelter from the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia captures the wild through a conservationist's eye. Let's get into it. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton, and you are watching Wild Talk. This episode of Wild Talk is brought to you by Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Bronc Beer, great fucking beer. Umarex Air Guns, hunt with air. Wild TV Plus, where the hunts never end. For this episode of Wild Talk, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and that's dedicate an episode to someone. I lost a good friend of mine the other day, someone I met like a bunch of all my other friends in this wonderful world of hunting, fishing, and conservation. She didn't hunt or fish. She was incredibly passionate about something we all embody, and that's sustainability and the preservation of habitat for the future. About a month and a bit ago, she was diagnosed suddenly with stage 4 cancer, and sadly, on October 19th, 2025, she passed away. She leaves behind a young son and a ton of great friends and family, but she was also one of my show's biggest fans and was a supporter of me since day one. The minute I got the call and talked about possibly taking over the reins here, she said, go for it. And I did, and here we are a couple of years later. So Janelle Robertson, my Zoomy, thanks for everything, for the laughs, for the friendships, and for the love. I'll miss you. All right, everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Wild Talk. It's been a while since I've been behind the mic, but you don't know that. Had the summer off, stockpiled some great episodes. You saw the one that we just released not too long ago of our trip to Africa. What an adventure we had. But now it's time to get back to business. Hunting season is in full swing. Did some fishing this past summer, and we're ready to sit down and talk with one of the most exciting professions that we've got here in North America. It's what everybody affectionately calls a fish cop. So I'm joined by Sean Tait from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans today, all the way from Nanaimo. Sean, a huge thanks for joining me today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know it takes a little bit of work to get somebody like yourself behind the camera for an interview, so huge thanks to everybody that made it happen. I want to dig right into it. So I said affectionately a fish cop. What's your formal title?
So fishery officer is our formal title. Affectionately call myself a fish cop as well, so it's all good.
Oh, hey, I've got some friends, as I said before we started recording this, that are fish cops. I got CBSA buddies, I got law enforcement buddies around the world. It's all said with love and respect. So for those that don't know what a fisheries officer is, what does a day-to-day type career look like for you guys? What do you do?
Well, I mean, I've spent most of my career on the West Coast. But that being said, even throughout British Columbia, we have a varying degrees of work that we do as fishery officers. So like being in Nanaimo, being on the coast, we were focusing on all aspects of what I tell people is if it's got fins and flippers, it's usually us. We're everything in the ocean is more or less our jurisdiction. So anyone who's a resource user in the ocean, from recreational, commercial, indigenous fisheries, as well as other resource users like whale watching and all that sort of stuff as well, that may not be harvesting, but they're also impacting different resources in one way or another.
Cool. So yeah, it's like,
our job is to enforce all the regulations our main mandate is the Fisheries Act and all the regulations under the Fisheries Act. So we go around and we're ensuring that everyone's following the rules. Well, if they're engaging in any of these activities that would involve the harvest or impact to any fish or marine mammals or species at risk, aquatic species at risk in the ocean and rivers and lakes.
No, I love that. You wrapped it up in a nutshell there for me. I love that term, fins and flippers. I've never heard that before in all my years of being out on the water and taking part and seeing you guys and gals all over the place. I've never heard that. I love that.
Yeah, well, I know that the conservation officers, it's fur and feathers. So
It
fins.
is. It is. I got some good buddies that are COs as well. So you guys have kind of like a rivalry, like a friendly rivalry.
I mean, I would say definitely if there's a rivalry, it's very friendly.
Oh,
We
yeah.
work very well with each other throughout the province. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's always digs
Oh,
from
exactly.
from one law enforcement agency to another. Or,
Yeah, that's right. You see it with the firefighters and the police officers, right? They're always
absolutely
kind of playing jokes on each other. But again, it's out of that love and respect for what each of you do. So how did you get into this line of work and what keeps you passionate?
So, I mean, fortunately for me, I was able to find the direction I wanted to lead me to this at an early age. So I think I was in like grade 11. I was playing high school football, coming and going to practice. And one of the equipment managers, one of the volunteers, was a father, one of the players that I played with. And he happened to be a conservation officer. So he showed up occasionally in uniform and, being a kid growing up on the coast, hunting and fishing, you're kind of, who these guys are and you have encounters with them every once in a while. But I got chatting with him. His name was Dan Dwyer. And this was in Campbell River. And he kind of seen that I had an interest in it. And he kind of invited me for a ride along through like the curriculum in high school. I was able to do like a sanctioned ride along with the conservation officers, and we're out trapping bears, checking hunters. It was sort of like a fall thing, and it worked out pretty good. Like I thought it was pretty cool. I thought that would be kind of a cool career, and he suggested some education that I needed to kind of align with in high school to kind of get into the university program that I needed to on the island. There was really sort of one that on the island that sort of stood out among the others, and luckily it was in Nanaimo, just kind of a short drive down the road. And that's sort of what got me into that. And I did the education through Malaspina University College, which is now Vancouver Island University, and a program called the Resource Management Officer Technology Program, which at the time was it's a 2-year program, a diploma, and now there's an opportunity to do a degree with that as well. So a lot of people end up doing that more now. And you end up with a bachelor's degree, which opens more doors for some people that are looking for it. But a lot of the agencies now, it's a diploma is a minimum sort of education requirement. So that's sort of what started me off. And I worked my way through the Alberta Seasonal Conservation Officer Program. And I did a few seasons there in Alberta and got some excellent experience, met some lifelong friends, really got to see that province. I'd never really spent any time in Alberta before getting a job there. And I got to see lots of cool spots.
I bet.
Did some horseback patrols into the Alpine, checking sheep hunters that border on Jasper, and checking fishermen, all kinds of crazy fish. Growing up on the coast, I never experienced. Never seen a walleye, pike, whitefish, yellow perch. I'd never seen any of these species before, and even in my schooling, I'd never really experienced them. So that was a great opportunity. And then, I actually went back to do the degree that had just started at VIU, and I got an opportunity to apply for Department of Fisheries and Oceans posting as a fishery officer. And, through the usually very slow process of federal government hiring processes, I was actually able to get on within about 4 months from the time I applied to the time I was heading off to training, which was
That's quick.
still unheard of.
No kidding.
So they hadn't hired in about 5 years, and I don't think were planning on hiring. And then all of a sudden they got a funding or something, and it was a big hurry to hire a troop. So myself and 22 other fishery officers went to training and all came back to BC. There was more. I think there was a troop of about 30, but 22 of us came to BC after no one had come in 5 years. And
unreal. Yeah. So you've been doing it a while then.
I'm almost 18 and a half years with fisheries now. Yeah. And then 3 years seasonal with Alberta Parks. So I mean, it's incredible to think like I'm over 20 years in this career and still getting to do great stuff and excited for the job and all these opportunities that keep coming up. You just keep putting your hand up and gaining your full repertoire of what
so it's something you knew that you wanted to do at a young age. You put your heart and soul into it, and you've been doing for a heck of a long time now. It's a sustainable career that I noticed you said that keeps you excited on a day-to-day basis. And that's something, in all honesty, you don't find in a whole lot of careers. So let's dig into that a little bit. I know that you've done some pretty cool things from doing my research on you. So when you first put on the uniform, did you ever imagine that it would involve international patrols, smugglers, and stuff like that?
No, I honestly, there was such a minimal, even going back to when I started my career, that we weren't doing the things we're doing now. International patrols are obviously very cool to patrol the Pacific, which is my opportunity, but there's officers on the East Coast that get to patrol the Atlantic as well, and the Arctic oceans. So it's very similar in certain ways. From what I've heard, have never experienced the work on the East Coast, but worked with people that have, and I think the stories are very similar in a way. But yeah, there's no way to even go back 20 years and try to think I'm going to be patrolling on a Coast Guard ship across the Pacific Ocean from literally coast to coast, and seeing all these fishing fleets, hundreds or thousands of nautical miles from land, and there's a serious harvest of the resource, all kinds of fish, normally ones we don't typically see.
Okay.
Close to shore in BC, but
right.
But still all part of the food web that are Pacific salmon and other species, and as well as cetaceans and stuff, are going to be feeding on at various times of their life cycles.
Yeah, so it's not just as you said, the common species that somebody like myself as a recreational angler would think of, like salmon or herring or even mackerel. What kind of things, what kind of fish are out there that?
Well, we do encounter mackerel for sure. There is a fair amount of mackerel harvest that happens out in the middle of the Pacific, and especially further west, closer to the Japanese-Russian sort of side. But another big target species it's mostly Asian markets, is Pacific Saury, which if you crossed a mackerel and a herring together, sort of like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a smaller fish.
Slender, sort of.
Very slender, very, yeah.
Huh.
They have little swimmerettes, kind of like the mackerel do as well. They sort of look in a way like a really skinny mackerel, but they're smaller. They're like herring size.
Okay.
And then there's various types of squid species.
Right.
That Japanese flying squid and a bunch of other squid out there that are being targeted, which are super cool. And then there's obviously some of there's billfish and sharks are a big target species as well.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
Right.
Yeah, but not typically what we would experience as target species on near coastal waters, anyways.
Yeah, like if you're inland, like my experience with sharks is when you're a kid, or even just recently in Rupert, we were catching dogfish, or occasionally you'll hear about someone catch a salmon shark or whatever, but that's an actual targeted market out there. So we're going to pause things here. We'll pick up this conversation right after this break.
Stream past episodes of Wild Talk at wildtvplus.ca.
All right, everybody, welcome back to more Wild Talk. I always love digging into these tools of the trade segments. I get to talk with some of the industry leaders about some of the coolest gear that's coming down the pipe that they've got out there in the airwaves, and this is going to be no different. I'm joined by Todd from the Pure Archery Group, and we're going to talk about their latest bow, the Bowtech Ascend. Huge thanks for being here, Todd.
You bet. Thanks for having us on, Steve. This is awesome. I was excited to join you and talk about some tools of the trade here.
And we talked a little bit about what we got going on beforehand, before we hit that record button. So let's start right at the top. For anybody hearing about it for the first time, what makes the Bowtech Ascend special?
Well, with the Ascend, we wanted to bring something to market that's really accessible. So Bowtech's been known as really the technology leader since day one, since we came out over 25 years ago. We've been known for our technology advancement. All the way up through our recent, really the leading technology out there is the deadlock technology for adjusting your cam system and kind of a DIY system. We're the originators of that system. A lot of companies have started coming out with something very, very similar. The intent of the deadlock system was to really put the ability to fine tune, kind of do it yourself tuning in the hands of the archer. We love our Bowtech dealers, and nothing, you can't take anything away from those dealers, but stuff happens in the field. You need to retune. You want to save some time. You don't necessarily want to go into the shop later in the season or close to season. So that's where deadlock comes in. But like I was saying, we wanted to bring it down to a little more accessible price point. So that's where the Ascend comes in. It's a bow that really features all those technologies normally found in a flagship price point bow, $1,599, $1,699, at an accessible price of $999, which is kind of that mid price point now. And that's with the deadlock technology. We have deadlock light on it, so it doesn't have quite as much movement as the standard deadlock, but it still gives you that micro DIY tunability. And it's really, really intuitive. It's easy for the common bow hunter to use. You don't have to be super techie. You can go out, you can fine tune your bow if something happens to it. If you fall, you break a rest, you need to retune in the field, then you have the ability to make that adjustment, makeshift paper tuning, you're back in business and not missing any part of your season. And that's what our Bowtech brand is about, is just putting technology in the hands of your average archer.
It's been called one of the smoothest bows Bowtech has ever built.
Mm-hmm.
So what's giving shooters that feel?
It's really the cam designs have come a long way over the years. You used to be able to get a super smooth bow, but really, really sacrifice speeds. Engineers have got much smarter over the years, but any engineer out there. So playing around with materials, weighting of cams, things of that nature, and they were able to produce a super smooth cam, but also something to produce really, really good speeds up in that 330 range as well, not sacrificing anything. So you get best of everything in the bow. And we knew this bow would do really well, one, because of the price point and the features and the technology, but it has done phenomenally out in market. And I think it's I see time and time again on our social media, people sharing their trophies with the Ascend and recommending it to their friends just because of what you get at that price point.
Yeah, I wanted to dig into some of the feedback you've got there, but it sounds like it's in the hands of sport shooters and competition shooters, backcountry hunters, and everybody's absolutely loving it. What's one of the main things that really comes back in the form of feedback to you guys?
Well, we get a lot of it, through our dealers, through our sales reps, through the consumers, and really social media as well. This was a little later launch for us, kind of an off season, but our goal was to launch that prior to bow season, so people didn't have to buy a new bow in the middle of the season, get it retuned, and maybe not even use it this year. So now that it's in the field, we're getting that real world feedback. It's been great for us because now we can take that feedback that we're getting on the Ascend and apply it to our new products that we're rolling out for later in 26 or later in 25 for 26 and also going into 27.
Yeah, we're coming up on 26 already. I imagine that
It is.
that bow's out in the field right now in the hands of people. They're aimed down at some whitetails, some mule deer, and it's knocking down some big animals.
It's a good all around east, west,
yeah,
nice and maneuverable, lightweight. So it's aptly suited for any type of hunting out there.
Oh, I told you before we got rolling, I'm in the market for a new bow, so I'm definitely going to be checking this thing out. If I wanted to do it, where can I find it?
Yeah, you can go to bowtecharchery.com and learn a lot more about it, but it's in shops right now. So you can go to any of your local shops and check it out. Shooting is believing. You got to get that bow in your hands, play around with it, and you will be pleasantly surprised, I feel, and be probably walking out the door with it.
I love that. Shooting is believing.
There
Huge thanks for joining me today, Todd. We're going to catch up again shortly. I want to talk about something next. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
All right, everybody. This next guest, longtime friend of mine, longtime friend of the show, needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway for those of you that may not met him. This is Kyle Stelter, the CEO of the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Kyle, again, thanks for joining me today.
Mr. Hamilton, thanks for having me on. And just a pleasure to be back on the show. And you guys just keep crushing it. Love it.
We try to, and that's it. And part of that reason is we have people like you. We have great engaging conversations. What I want to talk with you about today, again, shocking, I know, is conservation in action. What has the Wild Sheep Society been up to? I know as a member, I've seen something about some on-the-ground work that really making you guys stand out in the interior of British Columbia when it comes to disease. Talk about that for us.
You betcha. The one thing that we're really working hard on, there's two really in the interior, and we're working with the Okanagan Nation Alliance on a Seroptes treatment program. The California Bighorn sheep are really struggling down there, and we've been working really closely with them. We've got a great project going on and a ton of capital tied up in it, but we're our vision is to bring those California Bighorns in the Penticton region back to healthy status. So really struggling right now, an important project. And then if we go a little north, we've got our Fraser River Test and Remove. Mm-hmm. Steve, $2.1 million project, 10 years. And I'll throw a barb at the Ministry of Agriculture and BC government. They need to do their part to protect our wild sheep, and that hasn't happened in $2.1 million in 10 years. That's all it took. So crazy.
$2.1 million. Yeah. That's a ton of money from an organization that has how many people?
Yeah, it's we're just shy of 2,000 members, so a ton of heavy lifting, a lot of collaboration, a lot of really great organizations coming together to help these sheep, people that are clearly passionate about wild sheep. And, again, our members are stepping up. We've got an Adopt a Sheep program for that Penticton program, and we've had a ton of people step up and adopt a sheep and help look after them. And, yeah, really inspiring to see. And the proof is in the pudding. There's more sheep on the mountain because of it.
Absolutely. You don't see too many organizations that are actually putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to actually on the ground footwork and giving back to conservation. $2.1 million. That's all it took to make a difference, such as the Sheep Society has done. So before we pivot, I want to know a little bit about seroptic mange. What is that? You mentioned it quickly.
There's these tiny little mites that get in the ears of the sheep. And ironically, these ones are from rabbits, which is insane. There was a rabbit farm in that Penticton region, and they released the rabbits to the wild, and they had these little mites, and the mites got into the wild sheep. And basically, it's a pretty horrible death, to be honest. They can't hear, and they sort of lose their balance. They can't feed properly. And as a result, we end up with a scenario where quite often it's mortality due to predators or starvation or a rough winter. So yeah, it's a horrible death. And so what we're doing is we're trying to clear that mange, get those mites out of the ears of the wild sheep, and get them healthy on the landscape again. On top of it, there's another disease called Movie, which we've talked about before on the show. So once we take action on the Seroptes, then we're going to start trying to tackle the Movie issue as well. So it's a big deal.
It's nonstop. So let's pivot to something a little bit fun when it comes to the fundraising. I know one of the biggest events you guys put on of the year. I just saw some stuff on social media about it, the Northern Fundraiser. Let's jump into that.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's in Dawson Creek. It's January 30th and 31st of 2026. We got a great event planned. That northern community comes together like no other. All the money we raise up north stays in the north. So prescribed burns, predator management, all the stuff that we care deeply about, that northern community helps us come together and raise money for. And it's just a great event. We had lots of fun and tons of raffles, tons of auctions, and then just good people doing good things and having a great time for wild sheep.
What venue is it held in this year?
It's the Eventive Center in Dawson Creek. Yeah, and we've had that there for the last, I think, 5 years. The inaugural year was at a smaller venue, and we knew real soon we had to get something bigger.
Yeah, outgrew it quick. Yeah, that Eventive Center, I've been there. It's quite the facility, and you can throw a rockin' party there. So how do people get their tickets for this? When do they go on sale?
We have tickets on sale now for the Northern Fundraiser and our Southern Show, the Sleuth Conservation Mountain Hunting Expo. Go to wildsheepsociety.com. Homepage has it all there. Click on it, get your tickets. We will sell out, I promise.
Oh, we always do. I had the pleasure a few years ago to go into the one in Kamloops, and man, is that a good time. It's nonstop vibration. You walk through that door and you feel the community of like-minded hunters, conservationists, and those that just care about the wildlife and giving back to the resource. Got some amazing presentations, amazing donors, amazing vendors, ton of wicked volunteers that just give their time because they care about the sheep. So shout out some of your quick donors before we wrap this up.
Well, we've got a great conservation partner in Wild TV, and you guys have been doing heavy lifting, a big part of what we do, and a big part of getting our message out. And we're so grateful for the collaboration. Of course, I'm going to mention our good friends over at Sitka Gear because they're our official sponsor. And Precision Optics, we just wrapped up our Magnificent 7, which will contribute $150,000 directly on the ground for wild sheep conservation because of them and because of you, our members, our donors, our supporters that are stepping up and supporting the wild sheep resource.
Again, one last time, where can they get their tickets for this?
wildsheepsociety.com.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining me, Kyle. I have a funny feeling we're going to be chatting soon with a full-length episode with something kick-ass you just brought out.
Can't wait.
Stream past episodes of Wild Talk at wildtvplus.ca.
And we are back with more Wild Talk. You did 2 tours, if I'm correct, on the DFO ship in international waters. What's a regular patrol look like for that? Or how long are you offshore at a time? Or walk us through that.
Yeah, fair enough. So both tours left from around Victoria and headed west from there. They were on similar sized vessels. The most recent vessel was the Sir Wilfrid Laurier, which is a Canadian Coast Guard vessel. Yep. It's the biggest one we have on the West Coast. Very comfortable icebreaker. It spent the rest after the international patrol. Spent the rest of the time in the Arctic. So it's a very capable vessel, and it was comfortable. The crew was great. The vessel before, the first one that we went out on, was actually a charter vessel. So Department of Fisheries reached out to, put it out to tender on, is anyone interested in putting in a bid for a contract to take a group of fish cops west out in the middle of the Pacific. And we were fortunate enough to have one vessel that was capable of doing it. Unfortunately, it was on the East Coast in Newfoundland. So yeah, that vessel came around. It was part of the company is called, or it was part of a company that's called Atlantic Towing, which is huge in the Maritimes region, or in Maritimes provinces. And we waited for the Atlantic condor to come back around through the Panama Canal, and showed up in Victoria, reprovisioned, crew changed, and 10 or so fish cops climbed on board, as well as a couple of U.S. Coast Guard boarding officers, and with some interpreters, and loaded up on food and headed west. And Canada that was in 2003,
Okay.
2023, and no Canadian vessel had ever done that before.
That's unreal.
There was a lot of, there was a lot of nerves associated to it. We didn't really even know what we're getting ourselves into for the most part. We rushed to managed to get a nurse through the Coast Guard to come on board just in case we had some serious.
You're a long way out.
Like you fall off a ladder, break a bone, get impaled by something sharp, when, climbing on board these vessels. And some of them are huge, right? So you're climbing up like 20, 30 feet up the side of a ship in rough seas. So yeah, we had a great time. Honestly, it was something that had never been done. And we did our best. We ended up boarding. We headed west for like 8 or 9 days before we even encountered another vessel to board.
Jeez.
So you're just kind of heading west at, I think, 11 or 12 knots. It's just a big tugboat heading out into the middle of the Pacific. So it was something else. But
I bet. Like, did question everybody by now is thinking as they're listening to this: did you get seasick?
Well, I would say that I wasn't like very, very violently seasick, but I wasn't. There was definitely a few days where I wasn't feeling great.
I bet. And how long did it take you to get your land legs when you came back? I know sometimes even after fishing off the coast of Rupert for 8-9 hours, I'll stand in the shower and you'd be like, is this moving? How long did that take you?
You know what? I was expecting it to take a lot longer to sort of acclimatize back to land. But fortunately, like these boats are 230 feet long. They're pretty stable. And when we were on our way back in, actually at both times, the most recent time we went to Japan and the previous time we went into Kodiak, Alaska.
Okay.
And we had really calm waters for the last 3 or 4 or 5 days as we were kind of scooting along the Aleutian Islands and kind of putting into Japan. So that in itself was, you're pretty accustomed to solid land, and then you climb on board or you get off the ship and you go through customs and you touch solid ground, and
right.
It feels pretty good, but I didn't feel like what you're describing when you've been on a fishing boat for, all day or a few days, and then you stand in the shower and you're washing your face and you're like, you realize you're swaying back and forth because you've just been trying to keep your balance for multiple days. And
that's okay. Good. I'm not the only one that notices that.
Oh yeah. Well, for sure.
I thought it might have been a me thing, but I'm sure others have felt it, but I just couldn't imagine being at sea that long. I love the ocean. I love fishing, but I've never been far enough away from the coast to not see the coast. And that would be a bit unnerving for me. So what's the atmosphere like on a ship like that?
What's that?
What's the atmosphere like on a ship like that? Like when you're that far out, like what's kind of the feeling?
Well, you know what? I think if anything, there's camaraderie. You're out there, you're relying on, everyone has different skill sets.
Right.
And not just the fishery officers, like everyone on board, the crew on the Sir Wilfrid Laurier I think there was over 32 Coast Guard crew. So there's a lot of people on board, and they all have different backgrounds. Some are, specialized in all kinds of things, not just driving the Coast Guard ship. And with us fishery officers, there was a real widespread amount of experience. There was, obviously in law enforcement, there's ranks, and honestly, when you're on board, there's the people that are in charge, the OICs,
Yep.
but they aren't not necessarily the highest ranking person on the ship. And, there's people with skill sets that are brand new to the department that, hey, you have this skill set, we're going to take you. And, whether you're good with rope rescue
Right,
or
you're
you're
now
good
gonna-
with, you have language skills, you speak Chinese, you speak Japanese, you
Right.
speak Russian. There's all these skill sets that it doesn't really matter how much experience or what your rank is. You're all just a team,
Right.
and everyone's listening to the OIC, but the OIC is very open to suggestions.
Right.
Like, okay, like everyone has a different opinion about this thing, and how do you feel about this? Is it safe? What we've come to an enforcement action. There's violations. Like, what do you think? Like, you found it. How do you think we should proceed with this? And we go from there. And sometimes it's a sat phone call to the bosses back home to kind of go, oh, right, now what do you think? We're in it right now, and what do you think we should do? So how should we proceed?
Right.
But yeah, we have. I mean, we're dealing with all these different countries. There's no Canadian vessels that we're boarding. There's no American vessels that we're boarding. So you have a lot of different vessels. Obviously, there's huge language barriers for the most part. We do encounter some nationalities on board. There may not be the crew or the officers on the ships, but maybe some of the crew, the worker bees on these different vessels that from places like Indonesia, that there's a fair amount of English there. So a lot of the time you'll encounter guys that speak English, which is super cool. And you can ask them very candid questions about how their experience is out there and see how long they've been at sea. And most of these guys, they're not seeing land for like 6-9 months.
Wow. I can't imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. And these vessels were boarding various different styles of fishing apparatus. There's the long liners, which are probably similar to like the tuna boats and stuff on the East Coast, with like a long monofilament line for kilometers long with multiple hooks hanging off them. And then there's like various net fisheries. There's trawlers, there's seiners, and lift netters, which is kind of like a giant dip net along the lines of a seiner. And then there's hand like hook and line fisheries for tuna and squid and stuff, which we just don't see, which is super cool to check that out. And most of these boats are anywhere, like the longliners are the smallest. They're probably 80, 90 feet ish. And then some of the bigger, the seiners and lift netters, they're in the 160, 170 foot. And then, up over 200 feet. And then also you get into, like, we boarded a couple of trawlers, these factory trawlers, and they're almost 350 feet long. They got crew of 100 people on board, depending on the nationality, men and women. And they're dragging a massive net close to the surface, targeting sardines and mackerel as well. And then, yeah, they haul the nets on board. They all gets pushed down into a chute. All the fish get sorted. They get some of them, depending on what is going on. Most of them are all just boxing them whole, the good quality ones, and then whatever, like mackerel or sardines, they box them whole, frozen. So it's like a commercially packaged box, and then stored in the hull and frozen hulls for as long as they need to. And then we boarded ships that were also processing the no, I don't know exactly if it was non-target or low quality. They said low quality fish into fish meal. So anything that was like broken or damaged or squished, they would grind up, cook, and then put into sacks as fish meal. So they couldn't really tell us what they were using that for, if that's for like food or like fish food or dog food or what. And then also fish oil. So they would sort of render it down, get the oil out, and then grind up the rest. That was sort of the last little bit. So they're using pretty much everything, I guess.
That's just sounds, as you said at the beginning, like exciting. Every day is different. You wake up and you know you're going to be on the water and you're going to be dealing with something. So obviously, a lot of these cases are absolutely fantastic. You've got a good crew you deal with, and there's no problems whatsoever. And again, without giving anything away, there's some things you just can't talk about. So are there any like memorable encounters that you can talk about that are like, this was I don't want to say a bad situation, but this was a something that just sticks in your mind, like for whatever reason?
There's a couple. So I mean, some of the times it's not even just not just like the encounter you had once you're on board. It's just getting on board. You know, we, like I mentioned, this factory dragger or trawler that we boarded, 350 feet long. There's 105 crew, men and women on board. And your climb from, you get a picture, like you're in a little inflatable boat.
I've seen some of the videos.
Yeah, you're in an inflatable. You know, it's 24 feet long. There's 10 of us on board, and we're going through a 2-3 meter sea. The ship just keeps on cruising. They're doing a tow, so they're doing like 7 knots towing, and you're up alongside, and they're into the waves, and you're going up and down in a 2 or 3 meter sea, so that you're going up and down like
you're trying to grab that ladder
7 feet, 12 feet at a time, you know, waiting for the big ones. And yeah, you got this rope ladder that's hanging off the side of the ship, and you're just looking up at this spot, which is eventually a door way up this big slab of steel, and you got to crawl up this rope ladder all the way up there. So it's like wooden rungs with like a rope on either side, and that's the only thing holding the ladder. It's if the ship starts rocking, the ladder swings out.
Oh man!
And you swing back in, and you know, especially once you get to the top, if you were to miss a step and like lose a footing or a handhold, you'd be lucky enough if you just hit the water down, falling like 30 feet. But you know, unfortunately, there's a metal boat underneath you, so the chances of hitting your colleagues or the boat is also pretty high. So.
Man,
So even climbing up aboard these big trawlers is pretty incredible. And then, you know, once on board, the crew, they're just doing their job.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really matter what flag state any of these vessels are from. They're just working for a company. They're just an employee, from the captain all the way down to the deckhands and the worker bees. So, you know, they're not knowing. I mean, they may be breaking the rules. They might not even know they're breaking the rules because people that make a decision are so far above that a person on the ship is not going to know every single rule that is happening out in the Pacific. So yeah, like generally the crew's really friendly. They're trying to communicate with you because they haven't seen another human other than the people on board for months. Like usually it's months. And so if they have any sort of English skills, or if we have any interpreter on board that speaks their language, they're just like dying to communicate.
Happy to talk.
Totally, yeah. I mean, especially because there's men and women fishery officers boarding these ships, and most of the time, I would say 95% of the boardings we've done, it's all men, and you get these like. Yeah, female fisheries officer on board, and they tend to get flocked. You know, we're almost like running crowd control to try to, you know, make sure everyone's being professional and that. But yeah, it's a really cool experience, and I mean, I could honestly, this is a conversation by itself. I could go on and on about all the different stuff that you encounter when you're in 3,000 nautical miles from land.
I can't even fathom that. Like,
Yeah. The one thing that friends of mine is I posted the first time I went out, I posted a photo of me. We jumped. We're I think around 3,000 nautical miles out. It's 5,000 meters deep.
Oh,
The water temperature is actually quite warm.
okay.
It's the coldest on the Pacific is like more or less close to Vancouver Island. So out there, we get a lot of the warm, especially in the summertime, you get a lot of the warm water currents coming up. So it was 21 degrees, 22 degree water temperatures, like Celsius. And so we stopped for a swim.
No kidding.
And we were jumping off this Coast Guard ship or wherever. And, you're diving into this water that's just a unique color that we don't normally see on the coast. It's just kind of that very bright, not quite the same color as what you see in the Caribbean, but it has that similar sort of bright blue color. And you're diving in and it's crystal clear and it's 5,000 meters deep below you. And there's 3,000 nautical miles from any land, any help. So, I mean, unnerving for sure, but you got to do it, right?
Yeah, unnerving and humbling at the sheer size of the world at that point, right? That's where you just feel so small.
Yeah, especially when you're out there and you can look in all directions. It's endless visibility, and there's nothing. You see nothing. There's hardly birds or anything. You don't see anything.
Well, imagine the stars at night, though.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when you're fortunate enough to get those like really nice sunsets where you can see down to the horizon, and it's you might only get a couple on even a trip like that, maybe just one.
Okay,
but even that is
it's worth it.
Super, super, super cool.
So your job is part law enforcement, part conservation, and a whole lot of adventure. If you had to pick one part of it, that's your favorite. What would it be?
Well, I mean, every law enforcement officer likes catching bad guys. It's sort of, it may not be what we got into the job to do, but it's sure a highlight when you're in it, to catch the bad guys and make a difference. But there's definitely other jobs that fishery officers could do that catch way more bad guys and make big differences. But not a whole lot have the adventure that is tied to this job.
No kidding.
I've seen, I mean, I started my career in Haida Gwaii, which is an incredible place to visit, work, just be magical, honestly. And then I came to Vancouver Island, where I grew up. So that was super cool. And there's adventure here, but it's also, being in Nanaimo, it's very close to all the major centers in BC. We got most of the populations within like 40 or 50 kilometers of Nanaimo. So we don't have the same wilderness we do in other areas of BC. But I had an opportunity to do an assignment in the Arctic. I went to Iqaluit, Nunavut, for about 14 months for an assignment as a fishery officer. And I saw the furthest north community in Canada, Grise Fjord on Ellesmere Island.
Cool.
I was doing some training in Newfoundland in St. John's back at the beginning of my career, and was able to do kind of more or less a ride along, but it was a part of like a work experience as a new officer. And I worked with the Offshore unit in Newfoundland, and I did a flight out to the Grand Banks, out to the 200-mile limit, patrolling all the draggers that are out there targeting cod and a turbot and all kinds of stuff like that. And then you look at my career now, it's more recently, I've gone all the way across the Pacific twice and patrolled all the way to Alaska. And I don't know, it's just, the adventure is like
you
incredible.
Can't miss that. Hey, holy.
And honestly, if anything, it's really triggered my own interest in adventure, and whether it's hunting or fishing or hiking or boating. I take the family, we hop in the boat, and we'll, okay, where are we going to go check out this time? Okay, we're going to go to the Broughton Archipelago. Well, that's super cool. We're going to do a camping trip up there. We're going to just cruise around. And even Vancouver Island is so vast.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at British Columbia, and then you look at Canada, and we just have so much wilderness that, 99.9% of the people in Canada will never, ever even know exists, let alone visit. So as a law enforcement officer for Department of Fisheries, and getting to be paid to do this adventure and fly to these spots in helicopters and float planes and Coast Guard vessels and our own patrol vessels, trucks, snowmobiles, side by sides, quads, e-bikes and Sur-Ron motorbikes and dirt bikes and stuff, depending on where you are, you have so much access to these very cool adventures that are at our fingertips, but we don't even, as Canadians, most of the time, we don't even know
realize they're there.
Yeah.
So no doubt in my mind, I know I'm thinking it, like there's going to be people that are listening and watching to this that are going, maybe this is the career for me. So what kind of advice would you give them if somebody says, I want to be a fish cop?
Well, there's really two main things that you're going to need to get into this line of work. One being is some sort of education in a resource-based, it could be a biology degree. It could be a diploma in even anything to do with the natural resources. So that's very broad. DFO is not super picky with your education, especially when it accompanies experience. So when you have, I was fortunate enough to grow up hunting and fishing. It's just kind of what my family did, and that's what we did. So you kind of get an interest in that, and you learn different things. You have a skill set, even just knowing fishing and hunting, you have a skill set in like the use of firearms, how different fishing gear works. Fish ID is another huge one that, especially for new officers coming not from the coast, to learn that there's 5 different types of Pacific salmon is a bit of an eye opener, right? So, and they all look so similar. So, when you have just a bit of education and a bit of experience, that really helps you out once you're in the job. But to be technical about it, you need a 2-year diploma in something resource-based, and any experience in the outdoors is a huge asset. Even if it's driving pickup trucks, running boats, 4x4 and quadding, these are all great experiences that super transferable to our career.
Right.
But yeah, just getting involved, get out of the house, get away from the electronics, and just get outside and hike and fish and see, growing up on the coast is you go down to the beach and start flipping over rocks and just seeing what crawls out.
Yeah.
All this stuff just triggers interest in a lot of.
It sure did. Yeah, I did that a ton as a kid growing up on the coast. Like we spent a ton of time on the beach, and countless memories of just flipping over rocks and grabbing the shore crabs and what we called eels, but they weren't eels. Can't remember what they are.
Probably gunnels.
Gunnels. Yeah. But just everything, it grabbed my attention. So a little bit of a pivot before we wrap this up. If someone wants to report suspected poaching or illegal, any illegal activities that are related to, as you say, fins and flippers, how do they do it?
So we have our DFO radio room in the Pacific region that they take all our calls for the ORR line, or Observe, Record, Report line. There's a bunch of numbers that all sort of lead you to that same thing. But if you Google Observe, Record, Report, or report DFO fishing violations, anything along those lines, it's going to lead you to that. The local number that we often use is like 604-666-3500. That's the one I use. But there's there's a 1-866 number, or various numbers that all end up leading to the same place. the good thing about our reporting line is there is someone there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So there's usually one during the middle of the day at peak times. There's often two, but sometimes it's, as you can imagine, when everyone in all of BC is calling the one phone number with, if there's only one person, they might not answer, but if it'll go to voicemail and leave a voicemail, they will get back to you. They can also send, you can send emails, report by email as well. That works. And there's links to that on our website as well.
Awesome.
And yeah, but the main thing that really helps us out as enforcement officers when we're trying to track things down, I mean, it's great to know that someone was fishing illegally or taking whatever that may be. It's great to know, but if there's some really key identifying features, a description of the person, what are they wearing, what are they driving? If you can get a license plate of a vehicle, that's amazing, because then we can track them down. A boat number a hull number off the side of, like, vessel license number off the side of the hull is very helpful as well. And if you can get a photo, awesome. That really helps us out, and we can follow up on things. It's very frustrating for us when we get back into the office, or you're scrolling through your phone and you see these occurrences come through or over the radio, and it's like, oh, real time, this is happening, or this happened. And you obviously, we try to make it out as soon as we can, but often we miss them. We're not there at the right time, and someone might just be, often it's like they're just leaving. Oh, we just saw these guys pack a bunch of salmon into the car and they just drove off. And if we don't have anything to follow up with, it's very frustrating for us, and frustrating for the member that's called it in, because they don't see the bad guy get caught. And we go, I wish we could have been there. We were not there. I'm sorry.
So never going to give too much info.
Yeah. We just, at least we know the activity's happening, and we can maybe patrol that area at the same time the next day and hope that same person's going to come back, and we can match up a bit of a description. But often it's just unfortunate. We try to follow up as best we can, but it's
so your call is always heard for anybody that's calling in. That just because they're not responding doesn't mean that they're not actively.
Honestly, in the NIMO, we get so many calls. We usually get 600 to 800 occurrences each year, and most of them aren't. It's not like we're spreading them out over 365 days evenly. Often it's in the summertime and the fall on the rivers, and we're getting, sometimes it's, you come into the office the next day and you got 20 occurrences. And you're like, okay, obviously we can't call everyone back. I'd love if we had a team of officers that were able to call these people back, but unfortunately we don't. And we take that into account when we're planning our patrols, and we'll follow up the best we can. But often you won't hear from us, but that doesn't mean you won't hear from us in the future, because, hey, the guy that you actually called in a month ago or a few weeks ago, well, look, we caught him, and we'd really like to talk to you because you saw him a few weeks ago as well. So writing things down or taking photos and having them in your phone for future is helpful. And if we end up giving you a call back and then you still have that information, you haven't forgot it, which all of us, we get caught up in life and forget all kinds of stuff. So,
I think that's an absolutely perfect way to end it there. They are listening. They will call you back when there's enough info. They are actively responding when they can to good info. So observe, record, report. And a huge thanks to you, Shaun, for everything that you're doing and for spending a little bit of time with me today.
Wow. Thanks for having me. I had a great time. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll do it again in the future.
Yeah. Take care, Steve.
This episode of Wild Talk is brought to you by Hornady. Accurate, deadly, dependable. Bronc Beer. Great fucking beer. Boomerex Air Guns. Hunt with air. Wild TV Plus, where the hunts never end.